then. Get it together.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate each and every one of you who are in the particular room on entrepreneurship. We really didn't know exactly what to expect today, but what I can promise you is that we are in the queendom of entrepreneurship. Like, we are flanked by incredible women in the Baltimore area that are building and doing things in a sphere that a lot of people are gravitating towards. I am Torrin Ellis, a diversity strategist, risk mitigator. I'm a public speaker. I'm a person who works with a number of organizations across the country as it relates to optimizing their D&I, equity and belonging practices. And so today we have the pleasure of being joined by Ms. Nayo Carter, Ms. Jathita Hernandez, and hopefully Dr. Tamira Lucas, who is trying to connect with us as well. But we'll get this party started because I want to use the maximum amount of time that we have to discuss an important entrepreneurship. And Nayo, I want to start with you. In addition to doing a Twitter style bio, I'd love for you to maybe contribute and talk to why is entrepreneurship becoming so incredibly important and vital for individuals, particularly women.
So I am Nayo Carter Gray, the owner and founder of First Step Accounting, where we make accounting a little less taxing for small business owners all across the U.S. I have been listed as one of the top 100 tax Twitter accounts to follow on Forbes, and was listed as one of the top 50 women in accounting to follow by Practice Ignition. Entrepreneurship to me is extremely important because it allows for financial freedom. So it is very difficult to build legacies just working a 9-to-5 job. And as the world is continuously evolving, we are also seeing that those 9-to-5 jobs are being replaced or streamlined with AI and other technologies. So it's important for us to be able to have some flexibility to use our creativity to, continuously help build our financial legacies and sustain a quality of life, right? One of the things that I like to encourage my business owners to do is not just look at today, but look at the future. Like, where do you want to go from here? And it all starts with the things you do today, and starting to, that snowball effect, earn a dollar, invest a dollar. So we need these entrepreneurs here to start earning the dollars and rolling the dollars back into the community to continue to build these legacies for our people,
Jathita, Nayo talks a bit about artificial intelligence, looking forward into the future. When I think about entrepreneurship and the women that are participating and pursuing such, you may have a different perspective as to why you feel like that is happening at an increased, some would say an alarming rate. It's a beautiful alarming rate. Women are starting businesses more. Please give the individuals that are in the room a Twitter style bio on who you are, your contribution to the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and why you think we are seeing this increase in entrepreneurship amongst Black women in particular.
Sure. Thank you so much, Torrin, and thank you to Coppin State for the invitation to participate in the summit today. I'm Jathita Hernandez. As was mentioned, I am an advocate for business ownership and economic empowerment for probably over 2 decades now. Owner and founder of Consult Square. We do marketing, market research, surveying, and have recently, during the pivot, entered into virtual event coordination and planning. My husband and I are also the owners of Card My Yard, which is a franchise for signs and yard banners. And I grew up in a family of business owners, so it has really been my life. But I think, to your point, women, especially women of color, we've gotten to a place in corporate, in the 9-to-5, where you hit this glass ceiling. And for years, people have talked about hitting this glass ceiling. I agree with Nayo that the freedom of being able to say yes or no, to control your destiny, is important. ownership is important. And I always tell a story, which I won't tell because it's longer and you asked for a Twitter spiel. But, being told, about 10 years ago from a CEO of a company that my ideas were great, but because it was his company and he owned it, that he was not going to use it. And my response to that was, you know what? I agree with you. It's your company. You can do whatever you want to. So what I need to do is go do my own company, because I don't need those limitations from anybody, whether black, white, man, woman. If I want to ultimately be the writer, the prescriber, the whatever you want to call of my own future, of my family's future, of my kids' destiny, then I have to write that. That is my responsibility. And I think once people of color, particularly women, start taking that piece seriously, that no one else, I'm never going to work for someone whose goal is for me to earn and be more than they are. It's impossible. No one wants to bring someone in and then, it's just not innate. The only way you're going to do that is if you create it. So I think a lot of women, I'm not a millennial, but that whole generation came in with this fierce energy for building, creating that, that AI that was talked about. They came in with all of that stuff. And I think it fueled a lot of people to say, you know what, there are small things that I can do. I can be an entrepreneur. I can be an intrapreneur within my own company. I can be an entrepreneur, and I talk about that a lot, an entrepreneur, meaning I don't necessarily want to make millions of dollars. I just want to replace an income, and that's fine. That's totally fine. And then there are others who want to build huge businesses. We want to take over spaces, take over industries. And that's a whole different space of freedom and ownership that I certainly strive to be in.
Can I jump in here, because you just touched on, I remember the first business I started was a multi-level marketing business, and the reason I started is I wanted to take over one bill. I wanted to have a new car and I needed something to fund that car note. That's what started it, right? And it's just the one thing. It doesn't have to be this huge thing. I want to be a millionaire. No, I just want a brand new car.
That's right.
Let's fund this. Right. Fund a new whip, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Jathira, I want to stay with you for just a moment. You said something that I don't want us to speed past. And so when you divorced yourself from those limitations in corporate America, and then over the last couple of decades, you have subscribed and signed up for everything that the market gave you. We saw the bubble burst in 2001. We saw a catastrophic chaos of economic downfall in 2008. As one of my recent readings, we lost something like 400,000 Black businesses last year in Q4 through and as a result of COVID. Talk to the individuals that are in the room around weathering the storm, because we are still in the midst of the storm. Some of us are closer to the eye. Some might be on the perimeter of it, but we are still in the midst of a storm. What does it take for an incredible person to weather those storms over the last couple of decades as you have done?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I'll start with this most recent pandemic, because I think that's kind of what's fresh on people's minds, is what we're kind of going through now. And I think for me and for both of my businesses, it took strategy, because it's a point where you're kind of going through and you're spinning your wheels, you're going in this little cyclone, but at some point you have to stop and be strategic about your moves. And when I did that, we bought our franchise in the middle of the pandemic. So, think about that for a minute. We were able to purchase a whole nother business in the middle of something that was considered the greatest, economic speaking, one of the greatest downturns of our lifetime. And that's because we noticed a pivot in the way that people were celebrating and doing things that we wanted to capitalize on. And the strategy piece of that was understanding the market and understanding when to do that pivot. So I would say that being able to kind of identify what your strategy is, being able to identify those areas in business, in your lane or whatever structure your business is, that would give you space to grow, space to adapt to whatever situation, is very important. I think for both of my businesses, the goal was always, yes, to replace income, but also to be able to hire folks that look like me. That was important to me. You can say, yes, I own a business, but now I'm an employer. That's when you start to get into this space like, okay, I'm making a difference, not just for my family, but I'm impacting other families that look like me. So when we were able to kind of, I've had employees for Consult Square, but when we were able to do that with the franchise as well, it was like, okay, this is, we've done this in the middle of a pandemic. And I've always said that for Black businesses, we're at about 1.9 million Black businesses. If every Black business could hire one person, we would totally eradicate homelessness of our people in this country. So that should always be the goal, is to impact not just your family, your legacy, but also be able to transcend that, to bring in other people, be able to hire, be able to be a difference for other people by employing through your own entrepreneurship goals.
What an interesting stat. I've never heard that before. If we could only hire one person, we would eradicate homelessness. It's a beautiful stat to drop into the middle of this conversation. Nayo, I'm wondering, for you, have you had to pivot in any way as it relates to how you approach business, how you acquire new clients? What has the pandemic been like for you? And then we'll kind of get into some of the more brass tacks of building a successful organization.
So for me, actually, I didn't have to pivot. First Step Accounting and me in particular have always been paperless, ahead of the curve in terms of technology. So being virtual was always a thing. My firm has been virtual since 2009. So last year was actually our highest grossing revenue year, because now people were realizing the importance of having the back office stuff done for your business, because people, for the most part, tend to ignore financial, accounting related information unless, like what we noticed here for the pandemic, everybody wanted to collect PPP or the economic impact disaster loan, and they couldn't do it without having actual financial statements, without having tax returns filed. They couldn't get the stimulus payments. So now all of a sudden it became a priority. So one thing I have always been a big advocate for is when you have a business, or you want to start a business, or you want to continue to run a business, actually treat it like a business. It's not a hobby. So there needs to be some due diligence on your part of actually monitoring, maintaining, and managing the financial piece of the business. This is the only way you realize how successful the business is, or if you need to pivot and make those changes because financially the business isn't doing so well. And so, you mentioned all of the businesses closing at the last quarter of last year, and a lot of that had to do with them not really understanding what it took financially to continue business. Like, if you know that the business is on a monthly basis losing money, you can make adjustments quickly. But if you're taking a year to do that, it's very hard to pivot or recover. Especially, we think about the compliance piece of it. I only look at financial statements when it's time to file taxes. That is the wrong attitude to have. So for me, this business has always been virtual, mobile, able to service clients all across the U.S. because I've embraced technology from the start. I realized that is where the world is going, and I didn't fight it. Everybody has a mini computer in their hand, and I continuously keep saying this. Everybody has a smartphone. It's so much we can do from our phones. Some people ignore it as if it's just a phone. but you literally can run your business from your phone. It's a lot you can do. You can sign contracts, you can get new clients, you can hold virtual meetings now. So for us to not be able to sell a product online and get paid using a mobile app, that's just crazy to me. So, I'm always use the technology. I'm always talking about automation. It is one of the biggest drivers in my business. And it's the one thing that gives me leverage and edge over a lot of people is because I have all these practices in place that I can serve clients quickly. I can get you up and running. We can get you your data at the drop of a hat if need be.
To those that are in the audience, I want you to use the chat on the far right side. Drop your questions in. I'll do my very best to bring some of those questions into the conversation, particularly the questions that have broader appeal to the viewership, if you will. If you are asking more specific questions, I would probably encourage you to reach out to the particular individual so that they can have that personal exchange with you. We'll want to use the maximum time to reach the maximum amount of information. And so to both of you, I'll put this question out. Either one of you can respond to it. But does our region have something in particular to do with how entrepreneurship is nurtured? So for instance, if we were to look at Atlanta, a lot of people say that Atlanta is the Black Wall Street. It's the Black Mecca. It is where businesses thrive. Black businesses thrive in the South. If we were to look at Austin, Texas, people would say that Austin is very, very rich and rewarding for those in the technology space. And you see a lot of people moving from San Francisco and Silicon Valley, where everything is so high, to a place like Austin where things are a bit lower. Does the Baltimore region present any narrative that is in particular leaning towards a particular service, a particular industry? What's your opinion around that? Or do you have the opinion that we could grow anything right here in Baltimore? Either of you can respond.
Well, I would kind of, and I know people hate to do this, to couple Baltimore and DC into the same, conversation for a myriad of reasons. But I think that this region, to include DC and Northern Virginia, and a lot of people call entrepreneurs in this area, they get contract rich because of the deep opportunity there is with being in a government area, being so close to all of these, energy, and Department of Education, all of these different federal government areas that require the federal government is the #1 contractor in the world. The U.S. federal government, #1 in the world. So being in this region certainly gives you an advantage to being this close to those people who are making those contracting decisions. So that's why they say people who do have contracting businesses in this area, they can get contract rich like this, because that's a lot of people you meet that have businesses. You ask them, what do they do? Well, I'm a contractor. I'm a federal government contractor. I'm a subcontractor. because those opportunities are plentiful in this area. And if you're lucky to get one of those, either on your own merit or through SBA 8A programs, then that's amazing. But I would definitely say that that's one area that this region would be known for. I would also say, because in the Baltimore area, that because there is a port and a harbor so close, that exporting would probably be a pretty high ticket area for business growth as well.
Niall?
So I'm a big fan of I come from Baltimore. I was born here. I love my city. And I think any business can thrive anywhere. Baltimore does have the unique positioning of being very close to major hubs, DC, major airport, the ports, like you mentioned. And so there are tons of opportunities here. But one of the things that I find in our communities that keep us from pushing forward into entrepreneurship is the risk element. And it's a new thing for us. Like, you know, in my family, there aren't too many people who have a business or don't have a job, so to say. And so our families and the people who are around us can influence the decisions we make in terms of, do I start this business? Do I take the chance? And, you know, I'm all for changing your circle to change your mindset. Sometimes you need to block those people out to take that leap, make the opportunity jump, or, you know, don't be afraid to do it alongside the job. So you have a little security as well as building the business at the same time. So we'll say you can build a business anywhere. Baltimore is a beautiful place to live. Now, I won't say that there are many tax breaks here, but if you are opening a business in one of those lower economic zip codes, there could be some possibilities for some grant funding or some economic impact tax credits because you're helping to develop and build up the community. So there's that piece of it as well. But, you know, sometimes it's more mental than it is a physical presence when it comes to buying and selling on your own versus showing up and punching the clock.
Let me see if I can.
If I could just add one thing to Niall's point, because I think it was really good about, you know, the environment that we're in, especially in Baltimore, and whether your mind is kind of focused on just getting that 9 to 5. But I think what COVID has shown us is that we can do business anywhere. And I think before, in our minds, we may have thought, you know, well, my business is local or regional, you know, I need to just tap into my clients in my town or in my city. And what COVID has shown us is that virtually we can be doing business in Africa, in Asia, you know, at the drop of a dime. You know, there's money to be exchanged all across this world. And I think COVID was one of those things that lift the veil off of what we thought was our business client circle, to where now it's nothing for me to have a client in California, or, you know, I never actually physically see them. You know, we just kind of talk in the way that we're talking now, doing business. But I think maybe 5 years ago, had you asked me that, I probably would have been a bit more limited in my scope. Like, oh, you know, I want to go and meet with them. Let's have coffee. Let's do it. And now it's like, no, you know, schedule a meeting with me on, you know, click on my Calendarly, schedule a meeting. We'll meet virtually. I'll, you know, go through. Exactly. Right. We'll go through everything online virtually. To Niall's point, we can sign documents online. You're literally conducting a business virtually without, you know, having to see a person face to face. So I don't think there are limitations to, well, for certain, you know, obviously for restaurants, you know, the entertainment industry, of course, you would have to be in that city. But I think for a good majority of people who, especially those of us who are in the service industry, COVID has certainly provided a greater opportunity to expand our client base outside of just our city, our region.
But I've even seen shifts in products, people who sell products. So like one of my favorite ice creams, the Brothers, I've seen them ship to different states. Mm-hmm. They figured out a way because of COVID. Yes. It just sped up our innovation. Like it may have been an idea that they were going to do this in 5 years, but they were like, oh snap, people aren't going out like they used to. Let's figure out a way to do this right now. We've even watched somebody like D-Nice, right? Who a DJ who was well known in the Black community now be worldwide. All because he decided, I'm going to go online and spin some tunes on Instagram. And now we have a new thing, Versus. So we've seen in the shift, even if you don't just have a service business. I've seen these, you know, brick and mortar stores now turn into fulfillment centers. It's like you can still maintain that boundary in the brick and mortar store. So when the world kind of opens back up to its new normal, you can service customers inside the store, but now you have an outlet to also serve them globally.
That's right.
Japan used the word limitations. Niall used the word risk. And I want to see if your connection is stable, Dr. Lucas. I want to see if I can get you in this conversation. So I'm going to just breathe for 2 seconds. And if you are able to talk, would love for you to comment and introduce yourself to those that are in the audience.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We're going to take advantage of this connection, you guys.
Perfect. So I'm so sorry, guys. I've had the worst week.
That's all right. Keep going.
Today just topped the cake. But
all good.
I'm Dr. Tamara Lucas. I'm a Coppin alum, which I am proud to be a Coppin alum and professor there, but also a serial entrepreneur in the Baltimore community. Recently, I expanded my co-working space, and so we are actually the Cube. I'm the CEO of the Cube Co-work, and so we are the largest Black women-owned co-working space in the United States to provide babysitting services with inside of our co-working space. And so we kind of just hit that milestone on April the 1st, which I'm absolutely excited and happy by. And everything that was already said, honestly, was definitely on the, I would concur with, as a woman and growing businesses. And, I didn't hear the exact question, Torin, but I was right. Everything they were saying, I agree with.
No problem. So let me put one out in front of the three of you because this one is absolutely rich, and I'm going to tie it into something that is sitting over on the right side in the chat. If you take your eyes over to Kara Stribling's, or looks like Cassie Stribling's question, I want to connect this statement to that question. And so when I think about entrepreneurship, in some ways, certainly there are a number of factors. The frequency in which it takes to be successful changes for each individual owner, the people that are leading it, the team that is being composed. I think about some of the pieces that are extremely important: headcount management, infrastructure, public policy, access to resources. So Casey is asking in the right side, she's saying, if you were to go and get a business mentor, what's maybe one or two things that you would ask of that business mentor to help seed your growth and your observation around maybe headcount management, maybe the infrastructure, maybe the public policy that is taking place, or some of the other aspects of building a business? Nayo, I'll start with you.
So the biggest challenge I always see entrepreneurs run into is hiring that first employee. One, being able to financially afford it, and two, making sure that they have work to do when you bring them on board. So, at that point where you're like, I'm doing too much and I need some help, that is where I feel like the biggest mentor, the best mentor will come in to kind of help guide you and tell you when that sweet spot is. And it usually, that mentor would be someone in your industry who has done that thing, right? They may now be pushed past that point and they're like, we got 20 people on staff. And it's like, I want to hear about this first hire, because that is the most important one. And then they can tie it into, if you needed extra funding to help fund the salary for the first person, where did you get that funding? So those are like the two top things I see that could make huge.
Jatheda, what would you say?
So I would say another point that I would offer if I was asked to be a mentor would be to help people understanding how to access funds and capital. I think a lot of people, when they need capital to either grow their business or start their business, they recognize it a little too late. So they aren't prepared. So, I always tell people, get prepared before you need to be prepared, especially getting loans, getting any type of funding, grants, because if you need the loan and you're not prepared for it, you're not going to get it. And there are, what we've seen with during COVID, we've seen a lot of opportunities come our way with different programs, different grants, not just from the government, but also that businesses have provided to business of color to win. And you think that your business is in a posture to be competitive in these lending and funding opportunities. But then when you step up to the plate, they're requiring things that you weren't prepared for. So I think introducing people to banking, introducing people to alternative alternative financing is important, and as a business owner, it's important to not just have a bank, yes, I bank with Industrial, yes, I bank with BB&T, but to have a banker, a person that I can pick up the phone and say, Ms. Jackson, I heard that this product is coming down the pipe. How can my business be competitive? How, what is it that I can do? Someone that you have a relationship with. That is really, really important. And I think as a business owner who's just starting out, understanding how to access capital, understanding the opportunities would be helpful. And I would certainly plant those seeds in any type of mentee that I had that's serious about business growth.
So in a moment of transparency, I will say to you, 23 years of being in business on my own, I've gone through the ebb and the flow, the up and the down. We've done the bankruptcy, lost everything, we've gotten it back. But the one thing that I've never done, Jathita, is establish a relationship with my bank. I've banked, but I don't have a banker. I still to this day don't have that relationship that you make mention of. And I think it's important for us to share with the audience that we are not primo, we are not perfect at being entrepreneurs. So while I am successful in my own right, there are certainly a lot of gaps in my business that could certainly be addressed and be made better so that we can continue to grow and to scale.
Speaking and you know what, I'll give you an example. And I agree, and I'm right there with you, because in all the years that I have been a business owner, I didn't start that relationship with my banker until about 2 years ago. And the difference is, and I have two banks that I work with. One is Industrial, one is BB&T. But my BB&T banker, before, I just kind of did it was very transactional. But during COVID, he actually would call me and say, we are just getting access to this SBA, whatever the new information. I wanted to go over X, Y, and Z with you to make sure you're prepared. And that's the difference between having a banker and a bank, because he knew where my business stood financially and how he could best support me. And it helped that he was a Black man. So he wants me to succeed just as much as I do within his institution. So that was helpful.
And as an accountant, I'll tell you, it's harder nowadays to find a banker relationship because there is high turnover at banks. So you generally find them in smaller local banks. So you mentioned BB&T. BB&T isn't as large as, say, like a Wells Fargo. So right. It's easier to establish a relationship there. But I agree, it's having a banker relationship is really nice if you can find one and develop it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You both have mentioned in a fringe way, you've mentioned a couple of acronyms, SBA, we've talked about PPP. I want to bring a more acronyms into the conversation because I think that they also might serve as a launching point for some of the people that are in the audience that are considering entrepreneurship, people that are in the audience that are already entrepreneurs, but they want to scale in a totally different way. I think about programs like SBIR, and some of the other programs from the National Science Foundation, some of the critical infrastructure sectors that are in the government. What do you tell people as it relates to how they may uncover some of these programs, these opportunities that are out there? And the both of you, are you familiar with SBIR?
What is that?
The data. All right, so you can take that. So maybe you can talk about where people can go to maybe find some of these programs that could help launch and catapult them and or their ideas.
So the SBI, so Small Business Resource, is that what you're talking about?
Well, Small Business Resource Center is one, but SBIR is a different program. It's actually a program that allows you to find technology that's
like tech transfer.
Yeah,
the lab to market.
Exactly, exactly. Technology transferred through academic institutions. Absolutely. Yes. You got it.
Yes. So it's tough, right? Because there's so much out there. There's so much opportunity. There's so much information. There's so many programs. And how do you navigate? How do you know which program is right for your business? Do I want to go in the 8A program? Do I want to, go with a, SBDC? Do I want to, go with this women's program? Do I want to join a chamber of commerce? There's so much coming at business owners at one time, and having to navigate and understand all of these different opportunities sometimes can be a little bit daunting in itself. I think to one of your earlier questions, having a mentor in your industry that can tell you, this might be total BS versus this is something that you definitely need to attach yourself to, right? Because I know I've gone down paths with organizations thinking that they're going to help me do X, Y, and Z. And next thing I know, I've wasted 2 months investing my time into something that was nothing, So I think having someone who can kind of help guide you. Of course, there are, SBA has a myriad of resource websites. There are business centers that they have across the country. MBDA has resources, minority business development. There are several women's business centers that SBA and MBDA have that would certainly help. There are, if you're looking for contracting opportunities, you have your NMSDC in our area, run by the fabulous Sharon Pender in Silver Spring, who can help, with contracting opportunities. You have, WeBank, who's for women, getting certified as a women business owner. Those certifications certainly help. There's so many opportunities. I think the important thing, again, is just to attach yourself to someone who's been there, done that, and can say, this is important for you to know about. This is an important area for you to kind of get about the lab to market and tech transfer and that whole space, which is sometimes foreign to a lot of people, but it's a huge opportunity because there are so many patents and things that are just sitting in federal labs that people of color know nothing about. And literally they're there for us to just take and bring to market. That there are programs, there are federal programs that were created simply to get the word out about that. I know of one of them with the Minority Business Development Agency that they have attached to HBCUs across the country to help them tap into some of these federal labs, tap into NASA to bring that connection between lab to market. So there are some programs out there. It's just kind of trying to navigate and find where they are.
So here's what I want to do. We almost are at time, and this plane needs to land in a particular way. And so I'd like for that to be as smooth as possible. So a couple of housekeeping, notes. Number one, for those of you that are in the audience, make sure you do a screenshot and or write down the proper spelling of our panelists' names. And I'm sure you can find them on LinkedIn. I know that you can most likely find them on Twitter or one of the other social platforms. But connect with them. I'm not ignoring your questions. We have questions in the audience around how to start a business, what types of businesses should be started. We want some questions around mentorship, so there's a number of questions that are out there. If there was a particular person that you feel should address that question for you, reach out to them. Part of the reason people like this do panels is because they are not afraid of and resistant of connecting with individuals. Mm-hmm. They want to help. Like that's the reason why we do panels. We want to help. So Nayo, I want to come to you and maybe you can give a closing comment, if you will. I'm looking at the time to see what we have, but perhaps you can talk about the one or two takeaways that you'd like for people in the audience to absolutely consider as it relates to building and or continuing to massage their business for the remainder of 2021?
So a couple of things. One, don't ignore the financial and back office side of your business. It is hugely important. It will help keep your business in business. Two, social media is a huge thing right now. And there is tons of advice floating around TikTok and Clubhouse and Instagram. And I want you to take it all in, but then consult with a professional and ask, is this right for me? Because just because you hear it's a particular strategy and it worked for someone else, it does not necessarily mean it's going to work for you. I also see that there are questions around starting a business and which type of business. I should start. I always tell people, don't chase the money. It is about doing something that you absolutely connect with, because when you do it, the money will come, because your passion, your inspiration to go do the thing will be there, and it will drive your success. So one, make sure you're taking care of that back office stuff. Two, listen to the stuff on social media, but don't take it as gospel. And three, don't chase the money. Those are the three things that I kind of live by and try to pump into new entrepreneurs all the time. And like, I want to get into this for the money. I'm like, no, don't do it, because then your business won't be successful after the first year. We don't want to crash and burn business. We want to build something that is long-standing and that will help develop our communities in a much more meaningful way.
And one more thing, Niall, I want to connect something that you said again, and you talked about AI, you talked about the back office, of course. What are you seeing in your clients as it relates to their adoption of technology? You also said that you've been virtual, you've been remote for the most part since 2009. You have emphasized your ability to be able to do business in a virtual capacity. How important is this new technology and the curve that we are approaching?
It is hugely important. So continue to embrace it. Look for ways to allow the technology to automate some of the things that you do, so that you can actually drive sales. You know, I know one thing that we tend to do, we wear all the hats as an entrepreneur, especially in those first couple of lean years. You're like, we don't have enough cash to pay people, so I got to do it all. So technology is one of those ways to allow you to be able to free up some of your time at a lower cost. So, you know, you may be able to hire using a site like Fiverr or using something like Zapier to automate some tasks. So lean on technology to help automate those things that don't need a personal touch, because in the long run, it'll help you be more personally involved in the mission and driving profits in the sales process, which is where most entrepreneurs are needed.
Jatheda, in 2 minutes, maybe you can summarize what it is that you'd love people to either consider or immediately take action on, depending on where they are in their entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely. So the first thing I would say is to remain flexible. I think being flexible in this environment is important, because as we've learned, you know, things happen at the drop of a dime, you know, whether it's the coronavirus, whether it's social justice, you know, there are things that happen in this country and in this world that affect our business. And being flexible and willing to kind of pivot and change as our surroundings change is definitely going to lead to business success. The second thing that I would recommend is always being a learner. For me, I am always looking for ways to learn something, some new, whether it's a new skill or a new hobby, something that can fill me and help me to be better at my business, that I can add an additional service, or like I mentioned, adding our virtual services to our business. You know, it took a lot of, you know, training in order to get up to speed with all this new technology. So I think it's important to always learn, always be open to learning new things. And the last thing I would say is to always be a blessing to other people through your business. Never get to that point in business that you are so high that you can't turn around or look in front or to the side of you and pull somebody in, pull somebody up. I always bring space and opportunity to say people's names, to say people's businesses whenever I am in a room. I always want to bring opportunity to my fellow sisters and brothers. It's so important that we do that and not think that we've reached this place that we just you know, we can't fall off the ladder. It's important to do that. So those are my three things: be flexible, be a learner, and continue being a blessing.
Niall Carter-Gray, Miss Jatheda Hernandez, and Dr. Tamara Lucas, absolutely appreciate your contribution. To each and every person that is sitting in the audience, we thank you for trusting our voices and saying that it was important enough to be a part of this compelling conversation with the empresses of entrepreneurship here in Baltimore City. I want to close by saying to each and every one of you, a formula that I respect and use and refer to each and every day is P minus I equals R. Potential minus interference equals results. No matter what space you are in, no matter what it is that you are doing, no matter what your contribution will be, find your potential and rid yourself of all of the interferences so that you can see and experience some type of result. I want to say thank you to Dr. Ron Williams and Clarice Tate for inviting all of us to be a part of this collective conversation. To each and every one of you, enjoy the remainder of your Thursday afternoon.
Thanks so much for having us. This has been really fun.
Yeah.